Facebook Marketplace 99 Cherokee XJ. Will it run? Wait, didn't we already do this in the last video? Well, yeah, we did. And the answer there was, no, it's not going to run. It's got a bad motor because we bought it thinking it had a bad motor because it was listed as having a bad motor. So the story is we found this thing on Marketplace. We looked at it and says, okay, well, this is either going to be a decent parts vehicle or maybe we'll fix the engine. I don't know. So we brought it back. We did the walk around on it in the last video, and this thing is really clean. Underneath all of the filth on the paint is good paint. Interior is so-so, but the bottom of this thing is spotless. There's no rust anywhere. So it's not going to be a parts vehicle. We're going to save this thing. So now, some of you guys were like, throw a V8 in it, put a V8 in it. But you know what? I'll tell you what, I still don't know if this motor is any good or not. And I've got this just sitting on the floor. So look, it's not completely out of the question. If this motor is completely pooched, yeah, I might do a V8 swap on it, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I want to know if this thing is going to run. So at the end of the last video, we walked around the truck, and at the end of the last video, we cranked it, and it spins. But it spins like it has like no compression. It kind of hits on a couple of cylinders as it's rotating, but it sounds really flat. And my snap diagnosis was, well, maybe it's got a blown head gasket between two cylinders or whatever. And some of you guys are like, well, do a compression test. You know, you can't do a compression test on something like this to determine that. And I'll tell you why. Any engine with hydraulic lifters, after you crank it long enough without it starting, the lifters will bleed down. And so you'll do a compression test on it, but you'll get an erroneous reading because you're only going to get 30 or 40 psi per cylinder. The valves are barely opening and closing. So to do a compression test is kind of a waste of time. Some guys mentioned, well, maybe the timing chain skipped. That is a possibility. I don't know. But at the end of the video, we noticed that the distributor was just hanging above the block. It wasn't actually seated down into the block. It was just flopping there loose. So I'll show you what happened. So the 4-liter is actually the old AMC Typhoon 6. And originally it had a regular points distributor in it that you would adjust the timing. You know, you turn the distributor, adjust the timing. You loosen the hold down bolt and do your timing. Now evolution goes on into the 80s and the 90s, and now it's got an electronic ignition, and the timing is controlled by the computer. So what they did was they added this foot. So here it is on an intact distributor. They added this foot to the bottom of it. This foot isn't supposed to hold the distributor down. This foot is only supposed to saddle over the bolt, the hold down bolt, to keep the distributor from rotating. So you can't set the timing. You can't move the distributor to set the timing. So they added this. Now, somewhere along the line, and I have no idea where along the line, somebody removed this distributor. So the story I got from the original owner, it was kind of vague, but it's okay because he's not a mechanic. He told me that his kid had been driving it, it stopped running, they towed it to one of these chain places, they looked at it, said, nope, the motor's pooched. So he towed it home, and then he had a couple of other mechanics come and look at it and try to get it running. And they said the same thing, the motor's pooched. Now here's the unusual thing. I assumed, based on his story and finding this, that one of them had pulled the distributor out for whatever reason, and when they put it back in, they left this hold down clamp off. And then it would break the distributor. Now, why would that break the distributor? So you can see it's just a piece of cast aluminum. This is supposed to saddle over the bolt, and then this clamp holds everything down in place. Somebody left this clamp off. Now, I don't think it was during the last round of people trying to diagnose this, because there's no witness marks in the grease on the old distributor to show that there was ever a clamp on there, right? So that tells me that somewhere along the line, somebody pulled this distributor out. Now, I've had this happen on similar distributors that have the screws that hold the cap on it. Because what will happen is those screws will seize, and the only way to get them out is to pull the distributor and either work them with a small wrench or drill them through or whatever. So somewhere along the line, somebody popped this distributor out, put it back in, and only used this tang and the hold down bolt to hold it in place. Now, here's the thing with these. This is the oil pump drive tang here, and then you've got, this is the gear that engages the camshaft. So the helical cut on this cam, on this gear when the engine is turning, is pushing up on a distributor. So over time, it probably fatigued and cracked this piece, and the distributor popped up. And that's how we found it the other day. So I ran to pull apart yesterday, and I grabbed this hold down clamp. This was actually just laying on the ground in front of a Jeep that somebody had partially disassembled the engine on. So I grabbed this, gave him the $2 for it, snatched this distributor, which has got an intact hold down, and we're going to drop this in and see what's going to happen. I'm not entirely certain it's going to run, but you know, let's see. So I pre-gamed this already. It does have fuel pressure. I checked at the Schrader valve over here, so you can hear the pump running, and you've got, it smells like good gas, so we've got good fuel pressure over here. I rotated the motor to top dead center of the compression stroke, number 1 cylinder. Had to pull this auxiliary fan out. These 4 liters are packed really tight. So to get a wrench on there and actually get top dead, I had to pull that out. So right now, like I said, it's set at top dead center compression. The oil pump drive, you can't see it. There's a hole for it, but the drive is way down there. So that is set at 11 o'clock. So it's 12 o'clock, so it's set at 11 o'clock. And you got to set it at 11 o'clock, so when you drop the distributor in, the tang on the distributor grabs the gear along with the teeth on the camshaft, and it will settle the rotor down so that it faces number 1. So that's what we got there on the distributor. We're already marked number 1 on there, so now we just have to drop it in so that the rotor faces number 1 and give it a spin. I'm not entirely convinced that this what it is. Like, could it really be that simple? Could it really be this easy that that's the whole problem with this truck? But we're going to find out now. So I'm going to put this down while I drop the distributor in it, and we'll crank it over and see what she's going to do. All right, the moment of truth has arrived. Will it run, or is it pooched? We're going to find out. All right, so here's what I did. First thing is I pulled out the other 5 spark plugs. I had number 1 out so I can get top dead center, but I wanted to spin this motor over with the oil pump engaged. So I pulled the other 5 spark plugs, I dropped the distributor in, got the oil pump engaged, and then I cranked the motor for a good minute and a half. Because I suspected it had no compression before because the lifters bled down from people cranking it with no oil pressure. And that'll kill compression because the lifters bleed down and the valves open only a tiny bit. So I cranked it for, a good long while until the battery started to sound weak. I stuck the spark plugs back in it, cranked it again, and sure enough, it sounds like it's got compression. It sounds like a live motor now, okay? So I put the cap on it, put the wires on it, put all the plugs back in it, and let's see what it's going to do. Yeah, I feel like a kid on Christmas morning, right? All right, let's see what she's going to do. All right. Yeah, get you guys a view of the engine. It's a runner. It's a runner. It sounds like it's got a miss, but it's definitely a runner. I love this stuff. All right, let's put it in gear. There's reverse. There's forward. And it's been running for about 15 minutes now. So far, so good. Doesn't overheat. The temperature gauge is sitting right there in the middle. Even the air conditioning works, believe it or not. But it does have a mist. So let's go the old school way and figure out what's going on with this. I think it might just be a bad plug, but we'll find out. So I'm going to ground. Ground our test light. And we're just going to probe our plug wires one by one and see what we got. Alright. That one's, let's go in firing order here, alright? So here's one. Alright, one is live. 5 is live. 3. We got no difference on 3. Yeah, so that might be our bad plug. Let's saw number 6. 6 is live. Number 2. 2 is live. Number 4. Okay, we have nothing out of 4. There's 1 again. Alright, so number 4 and number 3. Alright. Okay. There's 3, there's 4. We have a bad head gasket between them. Those two cylinders are sharing compression. What are you gonna do, right? Okay, so we didn't score 1,000%. The motor is definitely not blown, but we're gonna have to rip into it and put a head gasket in it. Okay, that's not too bad, right? I'm gonna leave this thing alone for now. I'm not gonna touch it till we get to the new shop. But at that point, I'll pop the head off and we'll throw a gasket in it. And I'm not sure exactly what to do with this Jeep yet. I may groom it to be a tow vehicle. It's got the hitch, it's got the plug in and everything. I don't know. I don't know what to do with this yet. But there you go. That's a solid engine. It's a solid engine with a little bit of a problem. Guys, don't be afraid to go after those deals on Marketplace, because you can score just like this. I would go as far as to say probably half the things you see out there listed and have a bad engine, it's just something like this, you know? Don't be afraid to take your chances. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, quick post-video update. Because I was thinking about this as I was driving home, and there were a couple of things. First, when I rewatched the video, I noticed that as I was grounding the wires with the test light, that the spark jumped from 1 or 2 of them before I actually broke through the rubber with the tip of the test light, which means that somebody had already been there, somebody had already done that. Those holes were already there. So, okay. Now, we had 2 separate issues. We had the foot of the distributor breaking off and the distributor rising up. And we have that break in the head gasket. So one of 2 things was possible. First possibility is that they drove it for an extended period of time with the bad head gasket. Because it'll run on 4 cylinders. You can get down the road, you know, it just won't run well. So that's one possibility. They drove it running on 4 cylinders until eventually, not related, but eventually the foot of the distributor broke off and it rose up. Or, and here's another possibility, the foot of the distributor broke off and the distributor rose up somewhat. When it rose up somewhat, right, notice it didn't come completely up, but it just rose up high enough to advance the timing to where it was misfiring. And it could have misfired, detonated, and blown the head gasket between those 2 cylinders. So it's like it's one or the other. But either way, I know that the engine is basically mechanically sound. The reciprocating assembly is in good shape, so it's nothing that can't be fixed with some just straightforward mechanic work. So that's it. I just wanted to throw this in there because I guess I'm driving home and saying, but wait, okay, so it's got a bad head gasket, but it's also got a broken distributor. How did that come to be? I think we figured it out. See you tomorrow.